let's talk about the Obama recovery, because if you listen to Hillary today, again, you would have thought this was nirvana that we're living in. Oh my God, Barack Obama was the economic savior. He kept us out of a second Great Depression and so on. Well, the truth is a lot different from that. And so the truth is that the way I like to put it is we've had two presidents in the last 50 years who've come into office during periods of extreme economic crisis. The first was Ronald Reagan, and the second was Barack Obama. Anybody in this room old enough to remember 20% mortgage interest rates or 14% inflation? I sure remember that. The U.S. economy in the late 70s and early 1980s was in a devastated state of affairs. And so much so, by the way, just go back and read what people were saying about the United States in the late 70s. We were an empire in decline, that the Soviet Union or Japan or these other countries were going to take over as the world leader. We would never get out of this malaise we were in, and so on and so forth. So the economy was terrible under Reagan when he came into office, but it was also, obviously, we just lived through it. There's no question that when Barack Obama came into office, we'd lost 7 million jobs. The real estate crisis had devastated the economy. So this sets up a kind of nice natural experiment, right? Reagan comes in, the economy's flat on its back. Obama comes in, the economy's flat on its back. And what makes this experiment kind of interesting to me as an economist is that you couldn't pick two presidents with more diametrically opposed philosophies, right? I mean, Reagan's philosophy was we basically cut tax. I say we because I was proud enough to work for Reagan in 87, 88, but you know what we did. We cut tax rates, so we brought the top tax rate down from 70 to 28%. We deregulated key industries. We got the money supply under control to sweat inflation out of the system. In sum, the philosophy of Reagan was to let the supply side, the producers, the private sector producers, rebuild our economy. And remember what Reagan was probably most famous for. It was Reagan saying in 1980, government is not the solution, government is the problem. Obama comes in with precisely the opposite agenda. Whatever the problem is, there's a government solution to it. And so think about what we've lived through in the last 7 years. We had the $830 billion stimulus bill. We had cash for clunkers. We had Obamacare. We had tax increases on the rich. We had 3 minimum wage increases. We've increased the national debt by $8 trillion. We've got a flood of money into the economy through the Fed. That is to say, the left has thrown everything they've got. Every single page of the liberal playbook was thrown at this recession. And so there's the experiment. Now we get to look at the results, right? And so what these results show is the black line is showing the pace of recovery under Obama. And what that's telling you is that through the first roughly 6.5 to 7 years of the recovery, because the recovery began in June of 2009, the U.S. economy has grown by 14.9%. On a annual basis, that's a little under 2% since the recovery began. Under the normal recovery, so if you just look at a normal recovery, we've had something like 9 or 10 recessions since the end of World War II. Under a normal recovery, we had 29% growth, or almost, not quite, but almost twice as fast growth. And under Reagan, we had 36% growth, which is about 2.5 times faster. Those are gigantic differences. So one of the reasons I'm always asked, and I think this has puzzled a lot of people in politics and in the media, why are Americans so cranky? Because they're cranky right now. There's no question about it. They're angry, they're cranky, they're not happy with either party. They're mad at Bush for getting us into the recession. They're mad at Obama for not getting us out of it and not helping the middle class. And I would submit to you, this explains everything. This is why Americans are so angry, because this hasn't been a recovery. And the most amazing thing, if you look at by the way, the difference here, I think I have a graph here, in terms of jobs, Hillary said, look, we created 12 million jobs. Yeah, but if we had a Reagan-style recovery, we'd have had 18 million jobs. So we're 6 million jobs behind where we should be. The gap in GDP is about $3 trillion. That is to say, if we had a Reagan-style expansion today, we would have $3 trillion more GDP. That's the equivalent of the entire output of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan combined. Yeah, Americans are angry, and they should be, because we've had such a flimsy recovery. This is just kind of interesting. It shows that the unemployment rate was actually higher in the first 3 years of the Obama administration when we had the stimulus than it would have been under even by the Obama administration's own estimates than if we had done nothing. So in other words, if we'd done nothing and not borrowed all that money, we would have had more jobs than we would. And of course, the reason for that, sometimes we lose some of the basics of economics. The explanation for this is Milton Friedman taught us this 50 years ago, right? What did Milton Friedman teach us? He's famous for a lot of things, but I think his most famous statement was, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, right? What did he mean by that? If the government spends $1, it has to come from somewhere. I don't think there are any kids in this room, so I can say this to an adult audience. There's no tooth fairy out there passing out free dollars, right? And the whole premise of Keynesian economics is, we're going to spend all this money, it's going to have all these multiplier effects, and we're going to create all these jobs. Yeah, if you give somebody $1, that person can go out and spend $1, but they have to take the dollar from me or you before they can spend it, and that's why the program didn't work and why we should never do it again.